Millions of people who call America home might be living on borrowed time. Yes, you heard that right. Entire families, workers, students, and children, people who have built lives here, could be forced out with no warning. Why? Because 2025 has brought a tidal wave of new immigration rules that are turning lives upside down overnight. What you're about to hear isn't just policy talk, it's real, raw, and happening now. Whole neighborhoods may soon be ghost towns. People with legal status are being pushed to the edge. And the worst part? It could happen to you or someone you know. Before we get into it, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates from our channel. Imagine waking up to find out your life has become illegal overnight. No crimes committed, no laws broken, just a shift in paperwork, and suddenly you're no longer welcome. This is the terrifying new reality under a rule that's shaken the immigrant community to its core. The first bombshell is called mandatory migrant registration. Sounds harmless? Think again. This isn't a friendly sign-up form. This is full-blown surveillance. Every non-citizen in the U.S., whether you've lived here for 2 years or 20, must now officially register with the federal government. And not just once. Ongoing compliance is required. That means giving up your biometric data, showing proof of registration at any moment, and routinely checking in with immigration offices like you're on parole. Forgot your documents at home? You could be detained immediately. Not just undocumented migrants. This rule also covers people waiting on asylum approvals or those with valid work permits. No one is spared. This is no longer about illegal immigration. This is about control. It's about creating a system where anyone who isn't a citizen lives in constant fear of slipping up. With 46 million immigrants in the country, this law could trigger chaos like we've never seen. Families already stressed by visa deadlines and paperwork now have to live with the threat of being locked up just for forgetting a document. Is this the first step toward mass deportations? It sure looks like it. The message is loud and clear. Conform perfectly, or else. As if that wasn't enough to make your blood run cold, here comes the next sledgehammer to immigrant communities: enhanced deportation for alleged gang members. And by alleged, we mean anyone who looks suspicious enough to raise an eyebrow. You don't need a criminal record. You don't even need to be charged. Suspicion alone is enough to get you ripped away from your life and thrown out of the country. Authorities now have the power to detain and deport you simply because they think you might be associated with a gang. And they're not playing. Over 10,000 people have already been deported. Under this rule, some were never convicted of anything. Some were arrested and locked up in places like Guantanamo Bay before being flown out to countries they haven't seen since childhood. This isn't a crackdown on crime. It's a crackdown on anyone who doesn't fit a narrow mold. Hang out in the wrong neighborhood, wear the wrong clothes, have friends with the wrong reputation, you're at risk. Entire communities are on edge. People are avoiding public spaces, cutting ties, and hiding in plain sight just to avoid drawing attention. When the system is built to act on fear rather than facts, nobody is safe. And you better believe this isn't limited to bad guys. Normal people, teenagers, young adults, and longtime residents are being swept up in this nightmare. How did we go from due process to guilty by association? The line between suspicion and punishment has been erased. Now take a deep breath, because the next rule is like pouring salt on an open wound. It's called the termination of temporary protected status for Venezuelans, and it's absolutely devastating. Imagine escaping a collapsing country, fighting through red tape, finally getting permission to live and work in the U.S., only to wake up one day and learn that permission has been canceled. Just like that. No warnings, no grace period, just a blunt directive: pack up and leave. Over 300,000 Venezuelans are affected by this rule. People who followed the law, paid taxes, raised families, and started businesses are now classified as illegal overnight. They fled political violence and economic disaster. They didn't choose to leave their home country. They were forced out by chaos. The U.S. recognized this once, offering TPS, temporary protected status, as a humanitarian lifeline. But now, the rope has been cut, and it's not just the individuals with TPs who are suffering. Many have children born here. American kids who suddenly face losing their parents or being uprooted completely. It's not just unjust, it's cruel. These Venezuelan families are deeply woven into the fabric of their communities. They own homes, they work in healthcare, they teach, they build. And now, they're being told they're no longer welcome, despite doing everything right. If protections can be stripped from them, who's next? Haiti? El Salvador? Honduras? This isn't just a policy change, it's a signal to every immigrant under TPS. Your time is limited, your security is fragile, and your welcome is conditional. This isn't just about legal status, it's about basic humanity. Imagine being told your life, your contributions, your existence here no longer matter, that the government no longer sees you as worthy of protection. How would you feel packing up a home you built from scratch, closing your business, pulling your kids out of school, knowing it could all vanish because of a stroke of a pen? On paper, Remember, America is the land of second chances, a place where justice is supposed to be fair, where you're innocent until proven guilty. But in 2025, that idea is crumbling, and fast. With the introduction of the Riley Act, just being accused of something, no matter how small or even if you're innocent, can land you in a detention center with no way out. Imagine being arrested for something as minor as shoplifting or driving without a license, and suddenly you're locked up indefinitely. No bail, no trial, and your only path is deportation. That's the brutal reality facing thousands right now. The Riley Act doesn't care about circumstances. It doesn't ask whether you were falsely accused. It doesn't give you time to explain. Once you're flagged, you're detained. Period. And if you're undocumented, you're as good as gone. What's even more chilling is this law gives state attorneys general the power to sue the federal government if they feel immigration laws aren't being enforced harshly enough. Yes, that means states can now pressure Washington into ramping up deportations even more, like a punishment contest with real human lives at stake. This law is already being used to detain thousands. Families are being shattered over misunderstandings and minor offenses. And what about people who are caught up in the system wrongfully? Too bad. Once you're labeled, there's no way out. It's not about safety, it's about fear. And that fear is spreading like wildfire through immigrant communities. But if you think that's the worst of it, hold on, because what comes next cuts even deeper. Humanitarian parole programs were once a rare lifeline for people running from violence, persecution, or life-threatening danger. Families from places like Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela finally had a shot at stability. They were granted temporary relief in the U.S., hoping to rebuild, to heal, to feel human again. But now, that fragile thread has been snapped. The government has pulled the plug on these parole programs, just like that. Over 200,000 people who were legally allowed to stay, who played by the rules, who lived in constant gratitude for a second chance, now find themselves in the crosshairs of deportation. And let's be clear, we're not talking about people who broke laws. We're talking about mothers, fathers, children, many of whom fled horrors we can't even imagine. Now they're being told to go back to war zones, back to governments that want them dead, back to poverty and persecution. The excuse? The government says these programs were being exploited. Maybe a few bad actors slipped through, sure. But does that justify punishing the thousands who did everything right, who worked hard, paid taxes, and tried to survive with dignity? Families who thought they were finally safe are now living every day with a suitcase packed, terrified of a knock at the door. Over 20,000 deportations have already started, and more are coming. This isn't just policy, it's betrayal. People were told they were safe, and now that promise has been ripped away. They believed in the American dream. They believed this country would protect them, and now they're being treated like problems to be erased. And just when you think it can't get any more dystopian, here comes the end of birthright citizenship. One of the most fundamental American rights, being a citizen just by being born here, is now under attack. Under this new policy, if your parents are undocumented, your U.S. birth certificate might no longer mean anything. Let that sink in. Over 4 million children born in this country could lose their legal status. They didn't break any laws. They were born in hospitals like everyone else. They grew up going to school, pledging allegiance to the same flag. But under this policy, they might not be considered Americans anymore. Why? Because lawmakers claim that birthright citizenship encourages illegal immigration and even birth tourism, where people travel to the U.S. just to give birth. But what about the innocent kids who had no say in how or why they were born here? What happens to them? Where do they go? They've never known any country but the U.S. And now, they might be ripped away from everything they've ever known. This policy doesn't just threaten futures, it rips families apart. Parents will be forced to make heartbreaking choices. Do they stay and fight? Do they leave with their children? Do they risk detention? It's chaos disguised as reform, and the legal battles are already underway. But while the courts argue over definitions, real people are losing their rights in real time. Think about it. If being born here no longer guarantees you're a citizen, what's next? What other rights can be taken away? And if that's not horrifying enough, wait till you hear about the suspension of refugee admissions. For decades, America has been a beacon for those escaping war, torture, genocide. People from the most dangerous places on earth saw the Statue of Liberty as a symbol of hope. But now, the gates have slammed shut. The U.S. has officially stopped accepting new refugees. People who have waited years, some over a decade, hoping for safety, are now being told, sorry, you're not welcome. Over 100,000 refugees are stuck in limbo. They fled unimaginable horrors. They survived the worst, and just when they thought they'd reached safety, the door was slammed in their face. The government says this is because of resource strain and high immigration numbers. But how can a nation that once prided itself on compassion turn its back on the most vulnerable? This isn't just a policy shift, it's a moral collapse. These refugees aren't just statistics. They're mothers who lost children in bombings, fathers who risked everything to get their families out, teenagers who walked across continents hoping for a better life. And now, they're stranded, nowhere to go, nothing to return to, and no future in sight. Refugee refugee programs aren't just about paperwork, they're about humanity, and suspending them sends a chilling message. We don't care, we don't have room, we don't have time. The American promise is breaking, and the consequences are being felt in every corner of the globe. Imagine risking everything to flee danger, crossing borders, oceans, and entire continents just for a shot at safety. And when you finally arrive, you're told to wait, not in a safe haven, but in a hostile zone just outside the border. That's the cruel setup of the Remain in Mexico policy, now back in full force. This policy forces asylum seekers to stay in Mexico while their U.S. claims are processed, which can take months or even years. And we're not talking about safe, cozy hotels. We're talking about violent border towns riddled with gangs, extortion, and unimaginable danger. Over 60,000 people have already been dumped into this system. They fled horror only to land in limbo, living in tents or overcrowded shelters with barely any food, no medical care, and predators lurking everywhere. Kids are being raised in danger zones with parents desperate to shield them from violence that's eerily similar to what they escaped. What makes it worse? While stuck in Mexico, most have no access to legal representation. No one to help plead their case, no one to explain their rights. It's like being shoved into a courtroom with your mouth taped shut. And the worst part? This policy doesn't deter people from seeking help. It just makes their suffering invisible. Out of sight, out of mind. The government says this will reduce illegal crossings, but at what cost? Human lives are being treated like numbers, disposable, and forgotten. How can a country that built itself on refuge and freedom turn its back on people who followed the rules just to ask for help? And if you thought being outside the U.S. was dangerous, wait till you hear what's happening inside. The stricter public charge rule is making it nearly impossible for vulnerable immigrants to get legal status. Under this policy, if you've ever needed public assistance like food stamps, housing help, or Medicaid, you could be denied a green card or visa. That's right, asking for help to feed your kids or get a medical checkup could cost you your entire future. This isn't just targeting undocumented immigrants. It's going after legal applicants, people trying to play by the rules. The government now uses a broader checklist: your income, your health, your age, your education. If you're seen as likely to use public services in the future, boom, your application can be denied. And this isn't some distant maybe. Over 500,000 people were denied permanent residency last year. Under this rule, that's hundreds of thousands of families who contributed to society, paid taxes, raised children, and now face rejection for not being rich enough or healthy enough. It's like turning the immigration system into a credit score for survival. Got sick? Denied. Lost your job during a pandemic and needed food stamps? Denied. Caring for elderly parents with health conditions? Denied. It punishes the very people who need help the most. It tells immigrants, unless you're perfect, wealthy, and problem-free, America doesn't want you. This cruel standard is pushing families into hiding, making them afraid to get medical care or send their kids to school. It creates a two-tier society where those who need help the most are too terrified to ask for it. And when people are forced to choose between survival and legal status, nobody wins. But what truly takes this crisis to a terrifying new level is the increase in immigration enforcement at so-called sensitive locations: schools, hospitals, churches, shelters. Places that were once considered safe, sacred even, are now open hunting grounds for ICE agents. For years, enforcement in these places was limited to protect human dignity. Now, all bets are off. Parents are being detained while dropping off their kids at school. Sick people are being pulled from hospital waiting rooms. Worshippers are being followed out of churches. This is real, and it's happening all over the country. Fear is spreading like wildfire. Families are skipping doctor visits. Kids are too scared to go to school. People are dying in silence because they don't dare step into a clinic. Imagine being afraid to call an ambulance because it might get you deported. It's not just undocumented immigrants who are living in fear. Legal residents, green card holders, even U.S. citizens with immigrant relatives are being caught in this web of panic. Entire communities are shutting down. Neighbors stop talking, businesses lose workers, children are suffering, and all of it for what? A few extra arrests? This isn't public safety, it's public terror. The real question is, how far will this go? If sacred spaces aren't safe anymore, where can anyone feel secure? Is this the kind of society we want to become, where fear rules and compassion is criminalized? So here we are, 10 rules that could change everything for immigrants in the U.S., and not for the better. These aren't just policy updates. They're seismic shifts in the way America treats people seeking a better life. They affect families, children, businesses, and entire communities. Whether you're an immigrant, a citizen, or someone who simply cares about human rights, these changes should matter to you. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.